Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 19th, 2022 meeting of the Albany County Legislature. My name is Andrew Joyce, and I serve as chair of the Albany County Legislature. Our rules allow for a period of public comment before our meetings. Our rules prohibit members of the legislature from questioning the public and the public from questioning the members. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes each. But before we get to the public forum, I would like to take the time for a special presentation of a proclamation for the Shaker High School girls varsity soccer team, who ranked #1 in the state and ended their season with a 19-2 record. We wanted to congratulate the team for winning its first Section 2 Class AA title in 30 years and for advancing to the semifinals of the New York State Tournament. Come on up.
We want to thank all of you, everybody in Albany County, Colony, Latham, all the girls here. We had an amazing year, 19-2, Section 2 champion, Suburban Council champion, Hall of Fame champion, and regional champion. I mean, I didn't want the year to end, and every time we get together we have so much fun, and I hope that we can make this a habit, and I hope we're back. But girls, congratulations. It's a great way to end our year, and hopefully we have more success, and we want to thank everybody in this room, and thank you for this time. We really appreciate it.
As many of you know, how's that work, huh? I'm a former high school coach, and I'm very proud tonight that one of the young guys that I saw as an athlete in high school growing up, I recommended for his first high school coaching job, and that's Coach Mike Brem right here. And he's done pretty well for himself. In fact, I've never been to the Final Four. I did have a #1 ranked team before, but never made it to the Final Four. But What you've done for the Capital District, for Albany County especially, we're very, very proud of you. And I just love high school sports. I'm not a big pro sports fan, and I'm becoming less and less of a college fan. I love high school sports, and what you've done is truly astronomical, and we look forward to watching you next year, because I had lunch with Coach Brem, and he tells me preseason workouts are starting right after the holidays. So let's get at it. We'll see you next year here.
Yes. So we had one toast that we did all year, right? And that toast is, some ships are wooden ships, but those ships may sing. The best ships are friendships, and to those ships we drink.
Okay, we'll allow a few moments for the remainder of the program.
Pandemic began.
I need some water. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Beston. Brewski. Bergdorf. Chapman. Clay. Cleary. Camiso. Collins. Cunningham. Demolowitz. Drake. Efacoro. Ethier. Feeney. Fine. Grimm. Andrew Joyce. Ray Joyce. Kuhn. Lakakis. Lockhart. Murriello. Mayo. McLaughlin. McLean Lane. Miller. O'Brien. Hurley. Peter. Flosky. Reedy. Reinhardt. Ricard. Simpson. Smith. Tunney. Ward. Whalen. Willingham. I have 33 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please read the first name.
Carol Warneman.
I'd like to remind everyone you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and please silence your cell phones or any other mobile devices that you do have.
Hi, and I promise I'm not talking about tobacco settlement tonight. Okay. The state of California is very well known for being very environmentally conscious and accomplishing wonderful things. So it interested me that last week I read that Los Angeles was very pleased with themselves because they were getting ready to ban styrofoam. We did that years ago, right here. Another place in California was saying, we ought to do something about plastic straws and plastic silverware. Well, we did that years ago, too. I'm including myself in we on those because I worked very hard on both of them, as did a pretty enormous I'll wait until you're done.
Gentlemen, please.
Okay. There were enormous grassroots movements for both of those and many other things, to the point that this place was packed to the walls, and the back room also, with people who cared passionately about those things. Right now, though, I want to focus on accomplishments from this year. And I won't be saying we, because I really didn't do a lot about those. So those are primarily all yours, okay? Now, many bills were passed, and I know that Andrew is not going to allow me to list them. So I will only mention two. You made it harder for employers to discriminate against job applicants, and also Lulu's law, which made it easier to adopt cats. And I only just learned who Lulu was. That's Andrew's cat. Okay, shout out to Lulu here. Many resolutions. And since you face this way, and I always sit in a corner in the back or in the back room, you may not know that unless I'm dependent on a ride, which is rare, I stay till the end when you've done all the resolutions. And I started staying, the first time, it was really, I just thought of it as a courtesy. I mean, you all listen to me, I should sit down and listen to you. And I admit, like many people, I thought, oh, this is boring. But it isn't. And it didn't take me long to learn otherwise.
30 seconds.
Oh, God. Anyway, I saw how much work the committees were doing and individuals were doing on resolutions that affect our everyday lives. And they're all well worth reading, which, as you know, I do. I haven't always agreed with all of them, but I never lost sight of how many people were working so hard on them. Also, many of them, by the way, as well as bills, were bipartisan, which is a wonderful thing to see.
That's time, Carol.
Okay, I'll wrap it up then, thanks. I want to just thank the many of you who make me feel like I belong here. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you next year.
Happy New Year, Carol. Thank you.
Cannon Ryan? I think that's it.
Hello, my name is Canyon Ryan. I'm the Executive Director at United Tenants of Albany, also a tenant in the City of Albany, where 72% of evictions in the county occur this year out of 3,800. I just want to commend this body, especially the chairman, for allocating or considering allocating funding aside in support of tenants and getting some representation in the court. As we know, less than 2% of tenants get representation, meaning about 98% of tenants appear in front of a judge with no representation in eviction hearings. That's in contrast to 94% of landlords in the City of Albany who have appeared with representation. That's obviously unfair, but it's even more unfair when you consider that these people are on the other end of what could very much entail long-term homelessness, crushing debt, and that's with a money judgment. And I just also want to acknowledge what happens to get people in court. Because I work at United Tenants, I field a lot of calls. It's often the case that somebody pulled their back at work and they're out of work for 2 weeks, and as a result they're behind on rent, or their insurance lapsed, or their landlord illegally locked them out. And in all of these cases, if these tenants are considered low income, which would be below 50% the area median income, they would at least have a chance of having a skilled negotiator on their side saying, no, this person deserves a home. There's a lot of reasons that people fall behind on rent. I know sometimes we consider people in eviction court just to be poor people who don't know how to manage their finances, but it's often the case that it's women, specifically black women, and specifically black women with children who face and bear the brunt of evictions. About 70% of evictions across this country are black women with children. So it's a gender issue, it's a race issue, and it's a children's welfare issue on top of a financial issue. If we allocate more funding in support of these tenants, I think that we'll see long-term benefits across the city, and that'll in turn become county savings. So thank you to the chairman and the legislators who support the Eviction Prevention and Intervention Collaborative, and thank you to the body if you vote in favor of it.
Danielle Smith.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Smith. I am a tenant in Albany, an independent housing researcher and the daughter of a small landlord. Previously, I also served as the Housing Services Advocate for the City of Albany. Excuse me. During my tenure in that position, I worked with hundreds of tenants and landlords to help them resolve their issues and navigate resources. Essentially, I operated as a neutral third party and often a mediator in these situations. With that said, there were definitely times when I could empathize with the mom and pop landlord who was having issues with a tenant or struggling to pay the mortgage. However, I would also have to note that this was not the case for the majority of property owners and renters that I worked with. It was a much more common situation for me to find myself trying to assist a tenant whose landlord was violating their rights or neglecting to repair the property. Some of these problem landlords were local players, but many were large corporate entities. I'd like to take a moment to share some data with you. This data was published by the City of Albany, and it came from my research into housing court records provided to me directly by New York State. During Q3 of 2022, formal tenant representation rates dropped to 1.3%, which is among the lowest that I've seen going back to 2016. On the other hand, 92 to 94% of landlords were represented in court during that same time period. When it comes to eviction court, the vast majority of landlords have the upper hand because usually they can afford to hire an attorney. Tenants generally have much more limited options. Even in the event that they can afford to pay, many attorneys do not take on tenants as clients. Legal Aid, the only nonprofit service provider in the area, is constantly overrun with requests for representation. Organizations like Alternatives to Displacement and United Tenants do their best to help renters understand their rights in eviction court, but Albany's 2 court advocates are not attorneys and have a limited scope of practice. And finally, I would like to take a moment to share a couple of the tenant stories that I encountered during my time as the City of Albany's Housing Services Advocate.
1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Williams was assaulted by his landlord and illegally locked out of his apartment without a court order. He was unable to find an attorney to represent him, and Legal Aid was beyond capacity to take the case. Mr. Williams won his court case against the property owner, but because he does not have access to legal counsel, he has been unable to collect on the monetary judgment he was awarded. The last time we spoke, Mr. Williams was still homeless. Ms. Evans fell behind on rent and was evicted from an apartment without a residential occupancy permit. She was unable to obtain an attorney, but she did have a letter from our office stating that there was no ROP on the property. The judge declined to consider her argument, and Ms. Evans was locked out. She is still staying at a local shelter with her children. Her motion for an order to show cause was denied, and the city is currently pursuing court action against the landlord for the ongoing code violations. The last point I'd like to make is that being a landlord is an investment decision and ultimately a choice. For most tenants, myself included, we rent because we have to. We can't afford to purchase a home to live in, let alone additional real estate to make a profit. Thank you.
Zarina Jalal.
Good evening, everyone. As many of you know, my name is Dr. Zarina Jalal. I'm the supervising pharmacist at Lincoln Pharmacy. I wanted to thank you all for your time and consideration on Resolution 373. I understand that you voted for what you believe to be the best course of action for this county. However, with regards to this issue, you still have a lot of work to do. I hope that through this process you can at least understand that my profession is not something that I take lightly, and that I am very passionate about serving people through my role as a pharmacist. Prior to this process, I thought that that service would come in the form of using my knowledge to help people professionally by, actually being a pharmacist. But now I realize that in order for my fellow pharmacy colleagues and I to have sustainable practices, to be able to serve our communities through our professions, and in order to continue the legacy, not just of Lincoln Pharmacy, but all the pharmacies in this community, I must dedicate myself to advocating for my profession in front of bodies like yours. I don't walk around with my resume stapled to my chest, but I want you to know that I have spent the entirety of my career working to drive compliance in the behavioral health population. I've co-authored research papers, I've spoken at the national level about my experiences in driving outcomes, especially health outcomes in this community, or in this population. I serve on the leadership of a statewide organization that strives to bring innovation to pharmacy. So in that last law committee meeting, when someone asked if Genoa was an expert at behavioral health pharmacy, I want you to know that they aren't. Their successes come from a study that they designed themselves to make themselves look successful. The question really should have been, who is the expert at behavioral health pharmacy in Albany County? Because if you had asked anyone involved in this field in this county, undoubtedly Lincoln Pharmacy would have been their answer. And so I hope it's not too hard to believe that you have experts in behavioral health pharmacy right here in this community. In the course of the past 5 weeks, this body has heard from more than half a dozen pharmacists who have echoed my concerns that the patients at the Department of Mental Health are not being best served with an on-site pharmacist. On December 5th, the medical director of that Department of Mental Health, who is not a county employee, by the way, stood before you and compared pharmacies to fast food restaurants. The law recognizes the professional relationship that patients have with their pharmacists. So when you have someone in charge of making medical decisions at a facility you have oversight into that does not respect that relationship, you have to take action. How can you expect businesses to continue to make investments in this community if their successes will be weaponized against them? I came to this body with legitimate concerns that still have not been addressed. Instead, I have been vilified for following a process and a manual that isn't even publicly available. Meanwhile, my concerns of steering, of conflicts of interest, of potential preferential treatment of Genoa Pharmacy have been ignored. So go ahead and pat yourselves on the back for moving that clause on the contract, but until this body takes action to address the more egregious issues surrounding the on-site pharmacy, you are greenlighting corruption. Thank you.
Mohammed Assad.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohammed Azad. I'm at the Lincoln Pharmacy. I just wanted to thank all of you who supported us in the past and rest of us who spent time to just looking at all our documents and the information we send out. Thank you all. I take this time to just find out some of the checks and balances and accountability and ethics around this process. okay? Some of the law committee meetings, I think one of the law committee meetings, somebody sitting there from the county representative, department representative, they talk about, hey, these are the information, we survey the patients. So the members in the law committee just make it believe these folks are surveyed actually patients, so they have to believe that actually patients are surveyed. Subsequently, they come back and then say patients are not surveyed. So do we have any accountability for the person who made that statement? Because based on the statement you make one way or other way, your judgment will be vote one way or another way. And second thing is that we made a number of complaints. The one is like the letter was sent out bearing the Genova promotion. That does not happen like 3 months ago. That happened last year. It's about 15 months ago, we complained to the department on January 2022. Till now, we did not hear anything. Whenever we send any email complaining about this, and we all hear is, oh yeah, we looked at this, there is a no issues, okay? We do the complaint, pointed complaint, we get the answer, like a vague answer, and saying, oh, we looked at this, nothing happened. Till now, that's still open. And we talked about the clinic. You do a business, you gave it to a contractor, and they do the business in their premise. And what is the standard for putting their advertisement on the county building? And then their TV is still, today, it's running the all day, every day commercial at about the pharmacy.
1 minute.
That's where thank you. That's where all the patients say, they sit there and they look, like just putting here about Lincoln Pharmacy here, how this will be, it'd be allowed, and county property and the county money, and taxpayers' money. And still date, the steering is happening. And what is the action? If our county employee or county contractor is not doing what they're supposed to do, what is your action? What is your checks and balances you have? These are the questions we raised up throughout the process, and we came here and raised this concern in the same podium. And some of them are very proponent about, oh, we follow the process. Lincoln Pharmacy did not follow the process. Think about this. We put an RFP. We bid for an RFP 2 years from now. Okay? These people who complain against, they're going to still and sitting in the same chair and making the decision. What is the guarantee? They are going to act diligently and then just pick the best that serves for the patient. Thank you all.
Stephen Negron?
Sir?
Used to projecting my voice, sorry. My name is Stephen Negron. I am a local activist, organizer in the Albany Capital District area, and I'm here to talk about the EPIC bill funding. I'm here to basically ask that this gets passed. I like to get down to the numbers, and I like to just talk candidly. We're talking about using leftover funds, $320,000, which is a drop of a penny for the money that you guys control. On average, you got about 740 families facing eviction on every year. This program's gonna save about 64 of them. So we're really only asking that we make a dent into the housing crisis that Andrew Joyce actually commented on himself. I believe he said, we know that housing insecurity was a crisis even before the pandemic. We need to protect the tenants of our city. We also need to understand that COVID has made people more vulnerable now than ever. And based off of his statement, we weren't really in a good situation to begin with. Then we get hit with COVID, pandemic, recession. People in this city are crying, and there are things that are connected. We talk about the crime that's going on in this city. What are you doing to make an impact and to benefit the people of the city. We could be doing more. I'm gonna bring up one more point, then I'm gonna let y'all go. In the city of Albany, we have people that are facing all of these evictions. And the condition of living is kind of disgusting. About a year and a half ago, I was looking for an apartment in Albany. I was shown an apartment that had a dead, decomposed rat on the patio. They didn't bother to clean it up. That's what's going on in your city.
30 seconds.
Let's do a little bit more. Let's try to help people. Let's do what's right. Let's not sit here and argue over semantics. It's $320,000 of leftover money to help your constituents. Let's get it together.
Nick Rangel.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I am Nick Rangel. I'm the new Executive Director at Legal Aid Society of Northeastern New York. Today was my first day, and what a great way to start. Legal Aid Society is the largest nonprofit law firm in the Capital Region. And I want to explain some important aspects of what it means to provide funding to people who are facing eviction. Funding free legal aid to low-income households facing eviction saves $6 for every $3 that we spend by reducing reliance on other public benefits. It also improves health outcomes and educational impacts. When tenants have legal representation, the court system experiences fewer unmeritorious cases filed, fewer filings overall, which helps relieve pressure on the court system that has a tremendous backlog, as we know. It also improves and makes determinations faster and increases the out-of-court settlements, which saves both parties time and money. For tenants, having legal aid protects their due process rights and improves the fairness and equity of the eviction process. Moreover, when we bring and accept eviction cases to legal aid, we can connect that household with dozens of other programs and wraparound services, such as paying arrears to the landlord, getting families on public benefits if they qualify. That could help stabilize their household going forward, including housing vouchers, but also screening for other important life-saving programs like disability benefits, for example. So in summation, I thought this would go longer. In summation, funding civil legal services helps expand our availability to low-income households that need that stability in their life.
John O'Grady.
Hi, my name is John O'Grady. I've lived in Albany about 40 years. First 10 years I was a renter, 5 or 6 different apartments. And so I've gotten to know good and bad tenants, and I've gotten to know good and bad landlords. And the people who have spoken here before me have been really eloquent about what the reasons are for passing this bill. The main reason for me is just let's level the playing field. There's not a lot we can do at this time about the bad tenants, about the bad landlords. People are trying. It's not a problem that's going to go away very fast, and I'm not sure how much this will help. It just, gets to what's fair. Thank you.
Aaron Keller.
Hello. I'm very happy to see this legislator consider funding the Eviction Prevention Intervention Collaborative Program, that everyone's calling it EPIC. Because when you go to housing court as a tenant, the stakes are extremely high. You're dealing with whether or not you'll be able to sleep indoors in the near future. And going in there without any legal representation is a terrifying experience. Allows unscrupulous landlords to take advantage of tenants who don't know their rights, which court records show usually results in an eviction. According to Albany court records, only about 5% of tenants have legal representation in eviction court. The best way to prevent homelessness is for people to just have homes. Keeping people in their homes, trying to make so that less people get evicted, using means to level the playing field like this, letting people have their own defense, whether they can afford it or not, is an excellent way to make so that less people are kicked out onto the streets. A law like EPIC is an excellent way to make Albany a more just, safe, secure city to live in. Thank you.
Anita there?
Good evening. Honorable Chair Andrew Joyce and members of the Albany County Legislature. My name is Anita Thayer, and I'm a member of Housing for All, an organization of advocates that promotes all forms of affordable housing in our city and our county. I'm also a leader of the local chapter of the Working Families Party. First of all, I want to thank Chairman Joyce and the other members of this body for recognizing the present severity of the eviction crisis locally by proposing to fund the EPIC program, Eviction Prevention Intervention Coalition, as a model program. Evictions not only impact individuals and families with loss of their homes, but also adversely impact communities, as evictions contribute to instability of neighborhoods and loss of neighborhood cohesion. The EPIC program will help to bring some equilibrium to landlord-tenant representation in eviction proceedings. Currently, over 90% of the landlords in Albany City Court have legal representation, while less than 3% of the tenants have representation. As a retired attorney with 40 years of experience practicing in a variety of Capital District courts, including Albany City Court, I know that the system works best when every litigant gets full opportunities to state their case or their defense before the court, and litigants are fully informed of court procedures and the scope of possible remedies. Thank you for your positive vote tonight on the transfer of funds to implement the county's share of this new program. Thank you very much.
Catherine Kubaseri?
Hi there. My name is Catherine Kubeta Suri. I am a tenant in Albany. I've been a tenant since I moved here in 2009. And I believe that our city can do better, as we've been talking about. I also believe that parity and representation in the courts, especially doing with housing, has a major impact on the importance of keeping your housing, keeping your family's stability, and keeping financial stability. I'm a teacher in the City School District of Albany, and I love that when we have beautiful families and they enjoy beautiful stability with finances and with their children, and being a stable family and having a stable housing situation. It shows, and I would love for that to be more of a percentage of our population that is in our city schools, more of our population that is walking around our streets, walking around our awesome, amazing architecture in Albany. Just everything about Albany can be improved with this amazing, epic collaborative that's working on that. So the Eviction Prevention and Intervention Collaborative, I believe, has a big impact and could be growing in the future, and as an impact to make our representation greater and more even throughout all of housing. Thank you so much.
Alicia Bacon.
My name is Elisha Bacon, and I live and work in Albany for the last 5 years. Many people spoke to the data to support why we should have the EPIC program, so I'm going to speak to my experience as a Black woman and a tax-paying citizen. I moved to New York almost 13 years ago with just $60 and a dream. I wanted to be an independent person with a home of my own, and that's been my dream ever since I was a child. Over the last dozen years, I've had at least 10 landlords, and it's been my experience that most of them were bad. The most egregious stole my security deposit and my peace, making it so that at the end of the day, I come home to living in fear. One landlord rented me an apartment that wasn't even vacant, and 1 week into my stay, all the plumbing in the house failed, causing me to be homeless for a couple of days during my first semester of grad school. When I became a graduate fellow and started working an internship at Goldman Sachs, I thought I made it. I was able to afford to live on my own, but the situation continued to sour, with my landlord usurping my privacy and even entering my apartment without notice, on occasion, more than once, and to more than one tenant, all women. And so I'm saying this to share why this issue is so important to me. I was paying $1,100, and when I needed legal representation, I could not get it. The EPIC program wouldn't help someone. The EPIC program would help someone like me by just giving access to an attorney. My downstairs neighbor, who worked for Regeneron at the time, represented herself and lost. We couldn't get representation, but you can give us justice if you fund the EPIC program. We're just asking for an opportunity to be prepared for court. We cannot continue to complain about crime unless we're willing to commit to community stability. Thank you.
Megan Kamishi.
Hello. I'm not going to say any statistics. I'm just going to say thank you for creating this program, for Andrew Joyce's leadership, for representing the people of Albany and the County of Albany. And thank you for the people who spoke tonight, and I hope you will give it a positive vote. So thank you.
There are no more speakers, Chairman.
Is there anyone else in chambers who wishes to speak? Please join us. Our old friend, Patricia Sibilia. All good. Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Sibilia. I'm with the League of Women Voters, but I'm also an Albany County Redistricting Commissioner. And I'm hoping that work is near done. I'm here to say I'm back as an observer. So the League of Women Voters believes in really the engagement of people in their government. And our role as an observer is really not just to be present and watch, and things can change just by doing that, but also really getting the word out to others about what's going on in their government. So I wanted to really know that it was interesting as a redistricting commissioner when I would talk to the person on the street, I'll call it. Most didn't even understand there was a county government and what it did. A lot of people did not know who their county legislator was. So a lot of work still needs to be done by the league and by others in terms of just education and getting involvement. You might know that our local chapter celebrated its 100th anniversary this year. We had 16 members that were actually strong volunteers for over 50 years. Have you done anything for 50 years besides maybe be married? And a lot of them are still engaged, and it was really something that was awesome. So to the speakers tonight, you may or may not know about the League of Women Voters, but we thank you really for your engagement in government. It is so important. The League may not always agree with what you're talking about, but we will certainly believe in making sure your voice is heard, and that if you want to connect, we believe in partnerships. There's strength in numbers. Then please reach out. And lastly, I wanted to thank the county. I missed a lot of stuff, but one thing I did catch was really that I was very thankful to see that you guys did the ARPA survey, because at least you had a chance to provide, the people had a chance to provide input into what was important to them. So I thank you very much.
Okay, I have 7:17. We have to begin at 7:30 tonight, and we do have a post-public forum meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee, so the public forum is now closed. If you did want to make public comment, you're free to remain until the conclusion of the meeting to make your public comment. Audit and Finance will meet now, and the meeting will begin immediately following. I'd like to call our meeting to order. I would like to ask the birthday kids of the body for the month of December, Ms. Cunningham and Mr. Efficoro, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Beston. Brewski. Bergdorf. Chapman. Clay. Clary. Camiso. Collins. Cunningham. Demolowitz. Drake. Efficoro. Ethier. Feeney. Fine.
Yes, here.
Grimm.
Here.
Andrew Joyce.
Here.
Ray Joyce.
Here.
Kuhn. Lakakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
Here.
Murriello.
Here.
Mayo.
Here.
McLaughlin.
Here.
McLean Lane.
Here.
Miller.
Present.
O'Brien. Hurley.
Here.
Peter.
Here.
Plosky.
Here.
Reedy.
Here.
Reinhardt.
Here.
Ricard.
Present, Madam Clerk.
Simpson.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Tunney.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Whalen. Willingham. I have 34 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There is no previous business, but before we get to current business, I'd like to take a motion to take Resolution 579 out of order. Motion by Mr. Peters, seconded by Mr. Ricard. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, Madam Clerk, please read Resolution 579.
Amending the 2022 Albany County budget to provide funding for the eviction, prevention, intervention, collaborative, sorry, couldn't get that out.
Ms. McLean Lane.
Thank you. Please note my abstention.
Anybody else on 579? Okay, long roll call on 579, please. Mr. Bergdorf.
This is probably almost an explaining your vote type of thing before the vote is taken. We had some controversy, I call it controversy, in the Audit Finance Committee because this legislation, although it's a financial transfer, was not included in the off-the-floor item of the committee. We were told that, lo and behold, the people in this body and the staff were unaware that this program was coming to Albany County. So there couldn't have been a transfer before our December board meeting. Now, I personally, with the amount of people who have spoken, both last month on December 5th, and got up and talked about this program, people in the audience knew all about it. When did I read about it? I read about it in early December when the city of Albany passed its budget and said it was going to create a legal tenant advocacy program funded with $100,000 of their money, contingent upon a similar contribution from the city from the county of Albany. Well, it turns out what we're being asked to do now is not to make even a similar contribution, but we're being asked to expend about 70% of the cost of the program. Now, it's really unfortunate that none of this could have been discussed at a committee meeting, but me personally, I'm voting no, not because I don't want to help people, But we are going down a slippery slope here, folks. We, the Albany County and the city of Albany, are putting our thumbs on the scales of justice by going into civil private matters. What's next? Are we going to have the county pay for representing people in foreclosures? Well, why not? I mean, if you're doing it for a tenant, what happens to a homeowner that, you know, is going to lose their home? Are we going to have a program for helping real property tax owners who have paid their taxes for years and years and years and are now have similar problems? I don't know. I don't know if we're going there. Are we going to have a program where we're going to appoint counsel for auto repossessions or small claims courts? This is unprecedented what we're doing here by appointing lawyers and funding lawyers for private civil matters. So there are some real policy issues here that I would have hoped that we could have discussed further. Also, one of the speakers tonight says this was a drop in the bucket. Just do it. If it was a drop in the bucket, why didn't Albany just do it? They got $80 million in ARPA funds. We got $60 million. Did they make this a priority with the ARPA funds, their ARPA funds? Because in the outline, which I subsequently received on this, this is a program just for the city of Albany. Paid for with taxpayer dollars from Altamont and Bethlehem and the Hill Towns and Clarkstown and Guilderland and Colony and Waterville and Cohoes and everybody else. So all of a sudden, we're breaking new ground. We're breaking new ground where we're going in creating public goods.
1 minute, Mr. Bergdorf.
For legal representation. And there's another thing that sort of bothered me, as I think you can tell. I made you a tad upset about this. But Times Union, June 25th, January 25th, 2022. Reyes was one of 45 tenants who showed up in the housing court Tuesday as the Albany Housing Authority began the eviction process on the nearly 1,500 public housing residents who have overdue rent bills. Ladies and gentlemen, the city of Albany started this crisis with their housing authority by evicting 1,500 people. Then they blackmailed this body. They needed a mechanism to help solve their political problem in the city. And they said, oh no, we can't fund it. We're only going to put up $100 grand. Well, let's get the county to pay for it, because they pay for a lot of our other stuff too. So they made the program contingent on our
That's time,
funding.
Mr. Bergdorf, please. Wrap up,
Okay.
make a conclusion, please.
And now they expect the county of Albany and all the taxpayers outside of the city to pay for a problem that they created. That's not right. And that's why I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things. The article Mr. Bergdorf, quoted also did not really follow up, which was that anyone who was ERAP eligible automatically got a stay. Why? Because the state, for whatever reason, decided that if you're in a public housing, you're last to get ERAP. It also ignored the fact that those people weren't being evicted, but the eviction process was starting because housing authorities need to start that process to actually negotiate. So as far as a problem created by the housing authority that we're doing, we ignored some very important steps there that if you did the next layer of research, you would have figured out before launching accusations. Then the second part of that is that the county of Albany deals with the homelessness problem. When someone is evicted and loses their housing, the whole county is already on the hook. So if we can do things like get people to stay in their homes and potentially get landlord settlements and things that work for both parties, it could actually be a savings for the county. And let's be honest, the reason why the housing authorities and affordable housing tends to only be in the cities is because of redlining other things in the suburbs and places to make sure that housing would be available for people who need it. So this is a countywide problem for lots of reasons. And I will also say that what we talked about in audit and finance was this idea that this was an engineered issue to force a vote. What I do know is when the advocates came in and spoke, a lot of us thought it was going to be ARPA funding because it came in late. But there was money on this legislative line that could start the process. I've also been told that there might have been some initial misinformation based on the city press release that this would just be a citywide program. But to my knowledge and what staff has told me, as one of the co-sponsors, relatively recent co-sponsor, because we were seeing how it was going to be flushed out and whether or not it was going to be this year or next year, was that this would be a countywide program. Because eviction is a countywide program, and it's a pilot program. And it's not just as easy as comparing this to a complete small claims court matter, since landlord and tenant relations are governed by the larger government body, codes, things like that. During the pandemic, I saw landlord after landlord illegally lock out tenants despite a state mandate. And if a tenant didn't have a lawyer, they were just out on the street. So there are lots of reasons to do this. And I'm excited to see this program get developed. I think there are things we all obviously need to talk about. We need to flush it out. We need to make sure that there's no undue consequences. But this is something that we need to do because right now there is an unfair advantage for landlords to take advantage of the legal circumstances of those without the ability to defend themselves in court. And we need to make sure that is rectified. So I'll be voting aye, but I would just like to maybe take the tone and tenor down a notch, because when we start accusing each other, we can disagree on opinions, right? We can disagree on public policy. And there's good points on both sides, almost all the time. I work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. I have a ton of bipartisan bills. So just let's take it down a notch, and maybe we're going to disagree on this. But maybe there's just various needs we all have to deal with in various different programmatic ways that we're not all going to agree on, but there is a legitimate purpose to. I'll be voting aye, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Drake.
Well, it's the holiday season. They make a lot of movies about this.
Go, Sam.
One of the things in the holiday season that here is the city of Albany, not Twin Cities, wants to stuff their very big stockings with another favor from Albany County. But I think, part of the problem here is we hear from kind of one side of the equation, and I think it's easy to get behind these things, because it's sort of phrased as, well, we've got to help the city because the city has residents who need help, and the city is part of the county. And I get all that, and I understand the connection, and I'm not amused with it. But, it's kind of interesting. We talk about landlord-tenant relationships and, who has the upper hand, who doesn't, who has the advantages, who doesn't. In 2019, landmark legislation passed that I'm sure many of you who are students of state government are familiar with. It's Tenant Stabilization Act. I'm sorry, it's something more technical. Aren't as good as those, but okay, I don't know exactly the word. It was the 2019 Housing and Tenant Stabilization Act. It was a big game changer, and it provided a lot of barriers to the contract negotiation and resolution process between a property owner, a rental property owner, and somebody who's known as a tenant, a renter, a resident. You can use whatever word you want. But what is a landlord-tenant relationship? It's a contract. Contract between two parties. It's a civil contract, two private parties. The state's not involved. A tenant's not been accused of a crime. The weight and the hammer of the state is not being brought against that tenant. Okay? They are, in the eyes of the law, equal contestants. There's a complainant, there's a respondent. Okay? The only way to rectify a contract dispute that I'm aware of, and the only legal way, because I'm sure some people have talked about either, The only legal way to do that is to come into court for what's called a summary proceeding. And a summary proceeding should and could be one in which each person appears pro se and presents their case to an impartial tribunal. Generally one person, one judge, okay? But the reality is, with the 2019 Tenant Stabilization Act, with recent changes that were enacted during the pandemic emergency powers granted to the governor, administrative changes, policy, and process, the reality is now that I think you could say 10 years ago, and many people have testified here, you could say it was weighted against the tenant. I think it was true. No longer. This is a contract dispute between two parties. One party must spend a bunch of money on attorneys. Must. Why do I say that? Well, it's a very favorite statistic that's been touted in front of this body and in the newspaper a bunch of times. 94% of property owners in the city of Albany were represented by attorneys. Does anyone know why that is? It's because there's a state law making it mandatory to be represented by legal counsel if you are a limited liability company. So, you know, Frank Boreal LLC, right? Andrew Joyce LLC, you could be one person, one house, but you want to insulate you, your family from liability. Because, let's be honest, New York State, not the most friendly. When someone wants to sue, boy, they can get a lot of money out of somebody, right? So people protect themselves, right? Their lawyers tell them to. I'm sure Mr. Feeney's told his clients that, right? Protect yourself. Well, once you do that, the state law requires that you can no longer appear in court pro se. I'd love to appear in court and say, hey, this guy didn't pay me. But I can't do that. Not if I'm a corporate entity. The corporate entity is very broad. There are corporations that are large and corporations that are just as big. So why are 94% of those people represented? Because they have to be by state law. And do you think they're smiling when they pay that $1,000 bill? Believe me, every property owner I know would love to be relieved of the burden of that $1,000 bill. Are they gaining advantage? No. Because the process, the 2019 Tenant Stabilization Act, is weighted against the property owner. Why? Because time is that person's enemy. If I'm not paying my rent and it takes me 6 months to get through court, that's 6 more months I'm not paying. That's 6 months that I don't collect as a property owner. That's 6 months I don't have toward real estate taxes, mortgages, upkeep. $1.574 million in demolition and stabilization, levied municipal charges, City of Albany. Wouldn't it be better if we encouraged property owners to put money into their property instead of squandering it on public welfare? If you want to bring public welfare, it should be a public expense. Support both sides with attorneys if that's what you want to do. But we don't belong in private litigation between two parties. Thank you.
Mr. Jamalowitz.
I've been a landlord in this city for over 40 years, so I've seen both sides. I've been in city court 30 years ago, and I have a lot of friends that own a lot of property in the city, and I talked to them, and every one of them said, if they go to court, they'd rather have their tenant a lawyer, because everything goes more quicker, more smoothly, they can negotiate more, and it works good. My angle on this is that this is going to save me money and my taxpayers money. We spend over $11,000 a week on the homeless and people who need shelter for hotels every week. That's what's going to happen to these people who get thrown out of court, no place to live. They're going to go on the streets of Albany, they're a colony. I see them for a colony center just as bad as it is a Madison in North Pearl. They're going to be back out on the street, and we will be providing them hotel rooms and providing them services, and we pay for that. In the long run, I believe this will save the taxpayers of Albany County some money. In the meantime, some landlords will probably get paid a little quicker. And you're right, some of these landlords in Albany are scumbags. They don't take care of their properties, because I have properties next to a few who I fight with, because they don't take care of their property, because that draws my property value down. So, and it goes both ways. But I always say, call code enforcement. Because Albany Code Enforcement does an outstanding job. And if you get on those guys, they get on it, and they're on it right away. So I'll be voting for it, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Ms. Cunningham.
I didn't plan on saying anything tonight, but I must. And the reason is because this is a really simple thing. This is about leveling the playing field for people who are at an extreme disadvantage in a landlord-tenant relationship. They are at an even greater disadvantage because they're being evicted. Sometimes maybe through fault of their own, the board will sort that off. But the bottom line is having this levels the playing fields and enables folks who can't afford it to access legal representation in that equation. They don't have the equity of owning a home. They are a tenant with in jeopardy of now homelessness. And as my colleague, Mr. Mulligan's pointed out, without housing, the county of Albany is then feeling the ripple effects of that displacement. Poverty leads to lack of, enabling a person to secure employment, which would obviously prevent a lot of other social problems. So I see this really simply, and I applaud all the folks who came out today to point out just exactly who these vulnerable folks are. Some of us know folks like this very well, and eviction is a huge catalyst for a lot of other problems. And as one of the sponsors on this bill who's from the suburbs, I will say that a strong city of Albany benefits all of us, benefits the entire county. So if we can prevent homelessness in a dramatic way by using these funds in this pilot program, I think it's a no-brainer. And I'm not really understanding why we wouldn't do this, why it's not an obvious effort to start to help folks who don't have adequate or any representation in a court of law to deal with their eviction potential. And I want to thank the chair and thank Mr. Fine and the other sponsors.
Mr. Fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by saying I'm a landlord, and I have a tenant in the unit that I rent out, so I understand this relationship. I respect the tenant-landlord relationship. But I want to recognize the situation, similar to what Ms. Cunningham said, that the tenant is in, who's sitting in court before a judge and facing eviction. They're at risk of losing their housing. They're at risk of becoming homeless. And look, sometimes this is justified. But the least that we can do for them is ensure that they have someone advocating for them, an attorney representing them when they go before that judge. It's addressing a major imbalance, and we've all heard the statistics. Over 98% of tenants don't have an attorney representing them. Well, about 95% of landlords do. So this is addressing a fundamental imbalance. This should be an easy decision. It's going to make a real impact in people's lives. And it's going to, it's been brought up, it's going to save the county money in the long run. Thank you.
Mr. Grimm?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. One, the process failed here. This is a very controversial issue. The board should have been referred to committee for review. And we oftentimes, we don't have an off-the-floor during a legislative meeting. We actually have an off-the-floor meeting for finance. We should have taken this up in the finance committee and really hashed it out. And clearly, there's a lot of issues that we disagree on here, which were being reflected tonight. So that's number one. Let's try to work better. I'm not pointing any fingers. Let's try to work better at that in the future. I want to speak about this New York State war on landlords. It's got to stop. I talked to a landlord today. The tenant didn't pay a dime for 2 years. They did advantage of COVID. They left without telling the landlord, and all the pipes broke. That's landlord life today. I mean, I've talked to so many landlords in the last 3 months. This is their attitude now. Screw you. I'm not going to be a landlord anymore, because it takes pretty much an act of Congress to evict a tenant. The bottom line here is if you rent an apartment, you should be required to pay rent. We don't believe in that anymore. We don't believe in that anymore. You know, when I first got my first job in TV news, I got $6,800 a year, and I found an apartment for $140 a month. really clamorous. It was a studio apartment with no bathroom, I had to go down the hall. So if you rent an apartment, you should be required to pay rent. I know some people run into hard times, but I'm telling you, most landlords I know, they work with you. But this idea of taking advantage of what has happened in the last 2 years has drove a lot of landlords from the market. And what does that mean? Fewer landlords, fewer housing units. That's what that means. And this money is earmarked for the city of Albany. Let's not kid ourselves. There's no guarantee in this resolution that any of this money will go to any jurisdiction outside the city of Albany. No guarantee. So if that's your expectation, then you have to explain to me how you have that expectation. So now we're talking about tenants only in the city of Albany, not in Dublin, Colony, New Scotland, etc. The fact of the matter is, the war on landlords is going to add to more of a housing crisis, and it just isn't fair. This is about the government taking sides in a civil dispute. It's the government saying tenants matter more than landlords, when both of them should have equal rights. Tenants shouldn't, or landlords, neither one should have the government taking the side in a civil dispute. It's not what this country stands for, and it's not what this county legislature should stand for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Purley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also was not going to speak this evening, but I feel compelled to because, frankly, I don't think this is easy, and I don't think this is simple. I'm a little puzzled by the rationale that this is designed or would result in preventing homelessness. In fact, it may, but it begs the question: if the person is not homeless and on the street, and the person is not paying their rent, then who is being stuck with the bill? Right? Someone is being stuck with the bill. The bill is always due. Someone has to pay it. It's either the landlord being stuck with the bill again, or the landlord passing that along the way to other tenants in terms of higher rents. Passing it along the way in terms of maintenance that isn't taken care of, right? So the bill will be paid. It'll be paid by your constituents. In the future, it's the law of unintended consequences. We all like to do the thing that feels good to do for the group of people who we feel the need, right? But down the road, things wind up hurting other people in different ways. This one we could practically predict. In a more personal sense, about 6 years ago, my parents moved out of their small home in Altamont. They turned 85. They were moving in with my sister. My mom didn't want to sell the house. Part of the deal to get her to agree to move in with my sister was, we'll rent the house out, and that money will go to my sister to help, make the whole thing happen. We got a tenant who was recommended by the school district. Tenant paid 1 month in rent. We never saw another check for the next 14 months. Those 14 months, my mom and dad at age 85 still paid the taxes, still paid the upkeep, still paid the utilities. Fortunately, their mortgage was paid, right? But 14 months, that was their only income aside from Social Security, right? We all love the David and Goliath story, but it isn't always that simple. It isn't always that clear, right? Fortunately, in that case, I could go to housing court. And because we weren't an LLC, I didn't have to pay for a lawyer, so I could represent myself, and the tenant was there. And we got the tenant evicted. But, my parents never saw a dime. To this day, they never saw a dime. And they were out several, almost tens of thousands of dollars on limited income. And that was before COVID. So yes, we had a problem before COVID, but the problem wasn't as one-sided as it was presented on the floor tonight, right? So these things are more complicated. It's not quite so easy, it's not quite so apparent. So I just urge my colleagues to take all of the things into consideration.
Mr. Simpson.
Yeah, just a minor issue. I think it's an oversight. I would like to be added to this legislation as what I think legislative will allow.
Mr. Ethier.
Yes, I want to understand one thing. This is the pilot program, with the money put aside out of the program. Is there any detail on the program at all yet?
Say again, Mr. Ethier?
Is there any detail on putting money aside to look into this program?
All we are doing tonight is approving a budget amendment to move funding out of our contingent account to another line within the county. It's not going to any outside entity. Any next steps on this potential pilot program will be decided by this body in 2023.
So as of now, it ain't just limited for residents of Albany, the city of Albany, it could be the whole town.
Well, one of the points that was raised tonight was the city of Albany share being 100,000 and our share being 160. Well, our share of 160 is contingent on account that any pilot program that we conceive will include all of Albany County.
Albany County, I hope so, yes.
Because as I've stated multiple times on the record and amongst my colleagues here, this is a problem that affects every corner of this county, every single one. There are people out there in our districts that are one misstep, one problem away from homelessness. People that you may not suspect, people that not only say Albany, Colony, Bethlehem, wherever. That's a reality that this pandemic has brought upon a lot of people. And it's exacerbated already existing problem.
And I also, we're planning this thing. I know there's a lot of disadvantage to the renters, but sometimes there's disadvantage to the landowner, to the homeowner. So I think that we should take into consideration.
One of the things I was going to raise is there's been a lot of excellent points in the discussion, leading up to tonight, when this was first conceived. And, we are a key, when this passes tonight, we are a key member and a key factor in this collaborative going forward. So a lot of the points that are being raised, I hope we can adopt and the policies going forward and how we use this funding, in the community. So, good points. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just want to echo some of what Mr. Ethier is saying, that there is a small percentage of landlords, let's say the 6% that remain that are unrepresented, that maybe have financial problems themselves getting representation. And I would like to see a program that would address that issue as well. Because there are a lot of landlords, they're not really in it for a business. They may buy a two-family house and rent out one flat to offset their mortgage. And those people may have been adversely affected through the eviction crisis or through the rent crisis. And I'd like to see if we could allow some landlord assistance as well. If we're going to start a program for tenants, I'm a big believer of representation by all in court. And if we're going to start a program for tenants, I would like to see, the landlords be able to get some representation. That's a small percentage based on the numbers I've heard tonight, but they could be adversely affected as well.
That's a very good point, Mr. Ward. And another good point that was raised through this discussion is a screening process, for these services when we end up providing them. Is this an individual that just decided not to pay rent for several months? Or is this individual facing a real problem and there's an equity issue? So a screening process would be an important part of the policy going forward. Mr. Fine, then Mr. Ficoro, then I think we'll have a vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a sponsor of this, and people brought up a lot of good points today, and including the issues facing landlords, and I am open to having that discussion, having economic considerations for landlords. I think that's a discussion we should have moving forward. I want to add this, there's been some, I think, miscommunication on where this program's, where this is going to take place. Our intention is to make this program countywide. Also want to clarify, it's been brought up that the city of Albany put 100,000 towards it. Want to make note that they are also applying to the CARES organization for $60,000 in funding. This is funding that the city of Albany gave to CARES through the ARPA process. Thank you.
Mr. Ficoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying that I am actually also a landlord in the county of Albany. But in 2016, I was a graduate student at Albany, University of Albany. And myself, my friends and I, we were renting a 3-bedroom apartment on Washington Avenue. That's in the city of New York. In the city of Albany, right there on Washington Avenue, opposite Washington Park. And we lived in that apartment for about 3 years. And the landlord decided that he wanted to, renovate the apartment and put more people there in the apartment. But prior to that time, when he said he wanted to renovate this apartment, we never owed him any rent. Like students, there are two things very important to every student. You pay your rent and you buy food. You go to classes. That's all what we did. We paid our rent every time, every single month, no lateness, nothing. When it was time for him to say he wants to renovate the place, he wanted to kick us out immediately without giving us any notice, any time for us to like look for any place. So he took us to court because he was also a lawyer. He had like over 54 apartments or 54 buildings in Albany. So he took us to Albany Court, and there the judge was pretty much almost siding with him to like just like kick us out. And then the judge then asked if we needed a representation. And then we said yes, because we were just students and we didn't really know what we were doing. And we were going out against this lawyer that is very rich and has so many apartments and just wanted us out. So we told him, the judge, that yes, we needed representation because he figured out too that we did not know what we were doing. And if we knew what we were doing, then we would pretty much have more say and more leeway. And so the judge pretty much assigned us a representation, which was from United Tenants of Albany. And this United Tenants of Albany lawyer spoke with the landlord, who is also a lawyer, and we came to a settlement to give us about 2 to 3 months to look for a place before we can move out. And that was how it was settled. The funding that we are talking about tonight is going to a program like this. It's not to pay an attorney to say, oh, you don't have to pay your rent to the landlord or anything like that. It's more like, okay, we have this issue, let's come to a settlement, let's come to an agreement. And you can actually have a representation or a person that is representing this tenant that knows the law and can apply the law evenly. And so I'm urging all of you to support this because this is what we do. This is what the legislative body, this is what we are elected to do, to represent the people and to speak on behalf of people who cannot speak for themselves. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Long roll call. Long roll call on 579, please.
Beston.
In favor.
Bergdorf.
No.
Chapman.
Yes.
Clay.
Yes.
Clary.
Yes.
Camiso.
Yes.
Collins.
No.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Demalowitz.
Yes.
Drake.
No.
Efacoro.
Yes. And
Ethier.
co-sponsor, please.
Yes.
Feeney.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Grimm.
No.
Andrew Joyce.
Yes.
Ray Joyce.
Yes.
Lakakis.
Yes.
Lockhart.
No.
Muriello.
No.
Mayo.
Yes.
McLaughlin.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
McLean Lane.
Please note my abstention.
Miller.
Aye.
Hurley.
No.
Peter.
Yes.
Plosky.
Yes.
Reedy.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes, and I'd like to be a co-sponsor.
Ricard.
Aye.
Simpson.
Co-sponsor, yes.
Smith.
No.
Tunney.
No.
Ward.
Yes.
$24 yes, 10 no.
One abstention.
Oh, yeah, 9 no.
Resolution 579, the Eviction Protection Intervention Collaborative passes. 24 yes, 9 no, and 1 abstention. First item in the current business, 543, please. Actually, we can group items 543 through 560 as they are all related to the towns and the town levies. And I have a motion to group 543 through 560. Motion by Mr. Peters, seconded by Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. On resolutions 543 through 560. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The resolution 573 through 560 pass, unanimous. $561, please.
Amounts to be levied and assessed for highway, bridges, and miscellaneous highway purposes in the towns.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 561 passes, unanimous. 562, please.
Amounts levied to pay town budgets.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 562 passes, unanimous. 563, please.
Re-levy of unpaid school taxes.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 563 passes, unanimous. 564, please.
Re-levy of unpaid village taxes.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 564 passes, unanimous. Okay, we can group items 565 through 568 as they are all related to the towns and the town levies. Can I have a motion to group 565 through 568? Motion by Mr. Peters, second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, on 567, a typo was in the resolution. In the first resolved, the dollar amount should be $442,962.94. Misplaced decimal point there. Okay, on resolutions 565 through 568, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 565 through 568 passed, unanimous. $569, please.
Amounts levied for municipal charges for various cities and towns.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 569 passes, unanimous. 570, please.
Adoption of table of equalization for the assessment year 2022, county tax year 2023.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 570 passes, unanimous. 571, please.
Adoption of partial tax exemptions and amounts determined as the assessed valuation of real property as basis of equalization.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 571 passes, unanimous. 572, please.
Adopting county equalization rates for 2022 for the cities and towns within the county of Albany.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 572 passes, unanimous. 573, please.
Authorizing levies for debit and credit balances.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 573 passes, unanimous. 574, please.
Amounts levied for court-ordered refunds and county taxes.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 574 passes, unanimous. 575, please.
Taxes to be appropriated and levied upon the several cities and towns in the county for various purposes and for special district taxes in the towns.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 575 passes, unanimous. 576, please.
Approval of extension and tax rolls of form and amounts in tax warrants and authorizing their execution.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 576 passes, unanimous. 577, please.
Amending resolution number 473 for 2022 regarding the conveyance of real property located at 213 Mount Hope Drive in the city of Albany.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 577 passes, unanimous. 578, please.
Authorizing the installation of fencing at 260 South Pearl Street in the city of Albany and amending the 2022 Albany County budget.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 578 passes, unanimous. 580, please.
Public hearing on proposed local law number Q for 2022, a local law of the County of Albany, New York, amending the Albany County Charter for the purpose of establishing legislative districts based on the 2020 census.
All those in favor? Opposed? Public hearing for local law Q for 2022 passes unanimous. Local law is being tabled. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion. Motion by Mr. Baker, seconded by Mr. Fuller. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Have a wonderful night. Have a great holiday. Merry Christmas.
Happy
Happy New
Hanukkah.
Year. Happy Hanukkah. Be safe. See you next year.